Let's go.
Welcome to the Trusted Leader Show. I'm your host, David Horsager. Join me as I sit down with influential leaders from around the world to discuss why leaders and organizations fail, top tactics for high performance, and how you can become an even more trusted leader. Welcome to the Trusted Leader Show. It's David Horsager, and I have a special guest. He is on his own amazing. He also happens to be the son of the world's greatest motivator. I grew up listening to Zig Ziglar, and I was transformed by him. My parents listened. His positive, compelling message that had takeaways that have made me who I am in many ways. I'm grateful for our pure friendship. We do some similar but very aligned work in different parts of the world. But please welcome Tom Ziglar. Thanks for being here.
Hey, David, great to be on. Thanks for having me. I've been a fan of yours for a long time, so I'm excited to be here with you today.
I'm grateful, very, very grateful. Grateful, for you. It's certainly in your own right. I think I got to pre-read your first book and endorse it. It's full of nuggets and takeaways and inspiration. And we're going to talk a little bit today about your newest book, 12 Leadership Virtues for Disruptive Times. Before we get there, many know your dad, some are younger and maybe don't know him as well, but also just tell us a little bit about you. What are some things people don't know about Tom Ziglar?
Yeah, so going way back in time, when I got out of college, I wanted to be a professional golfer. And so I started working at the company to support my golf habit. So Dad, of course, he had this amazing company, and I was in the warehouse shipping audio cassette tapes and VHS, and then moved over to production, and then realized that the people who play professional golf are really good, and I wasn't quite there yet. Moved into sales and just loved it. It was kind of in the genes, I guess, and just kind of got into sales and sales leadership, and been with the company now over 35 years. Seems like a long time, doesn't it?
How has it changed?
Oh, wow. It's like everything's the same and everything's completely different. Dad passed away a little over 9 years ago. And before that, his speaking had wound down and everything. And so the way, our brand and what we were known for wasn't going to be the future. And what our brand would be the same, but how we did business would be different, because Dad, as you know, was a force of nature when he would speak. I think for 30 years, over 30 events a year would have more than 12 to 15,000 at each event. That's never going to happen again. Right. And so people would go, they'd be inspired. They'd reach out. Hey, what else, how can we bring this message into our company? And so the company built up around that. Well, when you have a personality driven business and a leader like that, and they're no longer on the stage, right? They're no longer doing it. Then you've got to figure out, okay, what are you going to do? And David, Dad told myself and my sister something that we didn't understand until he passed away. And that was, he said, you're never going to know true freedom until I'm gone. And what he meant by that is we were there to support him, to help his message. And so when in leadership, as you know, you can't mimic the leaders before you, because you've got different personalities, skills, experiences. You've got to maximize who you are, right? Otherwise you won't be transparent. People, they won't believe what you say because you're trying to act like somebody you're not. And so I had to dig in and figure out, okay, what do I love? What am I passionate about? What are my unique gifts? And that's what Dad was saying. He was saying, you're really going to understand and develop your unique gifts when you're figuring this out to grow it on your own merits rather than to support what I built.
And now you're doing licensing and certification, many things that we do in our own way, but you do have some amazing programs. We're going to talk about that a little bit later. To go back to the beginning and what your company was built on, even while your dad was around, Zig Ziglar, for those that don't know, and he was a force of nature. He impacted my life greatly. And of course, he is the top front endorsement on my first Wall Street Journal bestselling book, The Trust Edge. And he was kind and gracious. And I remember the first time I got to meet with him kind of solo in a restaurant in downtown Minneapolis, Minnesota. He and I think the first publisher. And so just a really, I maybe did meet him growing up with my parents going to different seminars that he spoke at or just listening. You felt like you knew him. But what a generous, amazing man. And he lived by something that you still live by, and that is you can have everything in life you want if you'll just help enough other people get what they want. Give us a couple thoughts on that.
Yeah, I mean, that is the quote. When you go out and you say, hey, what's your favorite Zig Ziglar quote? Just go Google it. You'll see it like hundreds of thousands of times out there. And it's how we run our business. You can have everything in life you want if you help enough other people get what they want. And when I talk about coach leadership, which is kind of our word for the leader that's needed in today's age, coach leaders understand that they achieve their dreams by helping their people achieve their dreams. Right. And it's a interesting thing because it's very, I think Dad borrowed it right out of God's word, out of scripture, and it resonates because it rings true. And that is his primary motive when he was building the business and in sales. That's what allowed him to be not only an incredibly effective and influential salesperson, but also with the highest moral and ethical standard. Because his motive was to find out what they wanted, what they needed, and to solve that problem. And when you solve problems, you do well, right? There's a lot of problems out there that need to be solved. And so that's where that quote comes from. That's the basis of everything we do.
So today, in the newest book, 10 Leadership Virtues for Disruptive Times, we certainly have disruptive times. And yet change has been around. I mean, I think people we think it's so unique. And of course, coronavirus, and of course, all these things. But you know what? There were massive challenges when, as an example, this country was formed. There were massive challenges in the, mid 1800s. There were massive challenges in the early 1900s. There's been other pandemics and other, high change times. And yet we do get focused on our time. It's certainly still disruptive. Let's talk a little bit about the impetus for this book and then get into a couple takeaways from it.
Yeah. So I was already, when I wrote Choose to Win, we had a 2-book agreement with the publisher, Thomas Nelson. And I said, I don't know what the second book's going to be. And they said, that's okay. You got a year to figure it out. And so at the end of 2019, I'm starting to write the book. And then 2020 comes, everything changes.
Yes.
And the publishing timelines got delayed. And I realized, wait a second, this book needs to be about all the disruption, all the change, everything that's going on right now. And I just have this imaginary, vision in my head. I mean, imagine at the end of 2019, Amazon is sitting in their strategic sales and marketing meeting, and they have this goal to increase their market share of people over 70 by 5% over the next 10 years. And then by April 1, they've increased it 200%. Right?
Yep.
That's disruption. We all got sent home. Life started changing. And then something interesting happened. And that was on a large scale, and you'll hear people talk about it. Nassim Taleb wrote a book called The Black Swan, and what he did was he studied world wars and pandemics and financial crisis to see who does the best in times of a black swan event like the pandemic. And so I started digging into that book, and the people who do the best are the ones who let go of the way it was, and then they take a little bit of information from one view and then a little bit of information from the other view, and then they go out and do life. And so in the context of the day, the people who do the best, they might get 5 or 10 minutes of liberal news and 5 or 10 minutes of conservative news, and then they go and do life, and it allows them to have that balance to make good decisions. Well, what happened when the pandemic sent everybody home and people they loved started getting sick and family members may have passed away and their job became insecure? Suddenly they wanted their life to matter and to count. They wanted to do something that filled their soul. They wanted to have a career or have a business that really made them feel like they were serving a higher cause or purpose than who they are. Now, here's what's interesting, and I know you heard this from Dad. In the 70s, he had this quote that he would say often: if standard of living is your goal, quality of life almost never goes up. If quality of life is your goal, your standard of living almost always goes up. Mm-hmm. And literally, as a nation and as in a global, that was the thought that went around people's hearts and minds: is, wait a second, why am I on this treadmill burning all this energy, and everything's centered around work, when my physical and mental health, my family, my faith, my friends, those are all more important. And so that shift happened, and people started making decisions in a different way. And then productivity went up. When people went home, there's 125 million workers in the United States. 60 million of those jobs can be done from home.
At Trust Edge Leadership Institute, we know how difficult it can be to lead a company through change, and how debilitating the last couple of years have been to teams. Based on decades of research, we know that to carve the path forward for your people, you need trust. Trust is the key to reignite your company culture. Trust is what will grow your bottom line, and you can't do it alone. What if you could come together with hundreds of leaders from around the world to increase connection, capacity, and also bottom line impact? That's why the Trusted Leader Summit exists. At the summit, you'll surround yourself with C-suite leaders, meet Olympic gold medalists, connect with high performers, and gain tools from global industry experts that you can implement right away to reignite your people. Join us April 12 through 14 at the Mall of America, JW Marriott. If you lead anyone, if trust and integrity matters to you, if you want a high-performing culture, this summit is for you. Get your tickets at trustedleadersummit.com today, and we can't wait to see you there.
Let's talk about that, because there's some things I really want to get into around coach leaders and everything else. But productivity, there's an argument on both sides here of that some people are more productive at home. There is also a lot of new research saying they're not more productive at home in certain cases and ways. What do you think about this? How do we, and maybe the question is, this is just, I'm going off the rails a little bit from what we're going to do, but how do you think people lead well in a virtual environment too? How do we keep productivity high? Because what I'm seeing is a lot of new data where it's not as high as they expected just a few months ago. And I think it was for the first 6 months, And
it varies. And it varies by market segment. So if you've got young kids at home that interrupt the work flow, that's a challenge. If you're single and you use the workforce as a major connector for your social scene, that can be a challenge. I think the biggest challenge, though, is a leadership mindset. The old style top-down, do it because I said so, command and control leader who likes to look at output rather than outcome, who doesn't really dig into what motivates and understands the dreams and goals of each person on their team. That person, they might be okay in an office environment leading. They do not do well on a camera. And so that's a productivity challenge. And then the people who are winning, people with disabilities, people with energy issues, people who have a hard time commuting, a lot of women. I think I read a statistic where 3 million women from the pandemic went home, and a huge percentage of them are not going back to the old job. Mm-hmm. And the reason is they got their life back, and they figured out there are other ways to make an income. And so there more, I think small businesses have been started in the last year by this group than I think in any time in history. I could be wrong on that, but I think I remember that. And it's because they see the balance in life of what's going on. So it's not without challenge. Now, I think Gallup just came out with a study that said the number is going to be about 37%. So 37% in the shakeout are going to be working either remote or hybrid when this all shakes out. And so here's the question. I was talking to a friend and he said, gosh, he sells technology, and his friend sells testing equipment for Siemens. And I said, how's it going? And he said, well, my friend's doing fantastic. He's made more money in the last 2 years than he's ever made. And I go, what does he do? And he goes, well, his whole career, he's traveled 3 nights a week, a lot of overseas trip, full day meetings in client offices around this technology. He hasn't been on one trip in 2 years. And I go, really? He goes, yeah, he spends half his time at the beach and his beach house and half his time in his main house. And he goes, he's doing great. And I go, well, let me think about this for a second. So what you're saying is he gets to pick what he eats and when he eats. He gets to determine his exercise schedule. He gets to spend his time with those he values and loves the most, which is his family. And he can have 3 meetings with 3 different clients on the same day when it used to take 3 days to have 1 meeting with 1 client. Well, duh, this is the perfect scenario for somebody like that. And so here's the reality is a top performer can work for anyone from anywhere. And so I think organizations have to understand that if you want to build your business with top performers, then you're going to have to do things that attract top performers. Apple, at the middle of the summer, before this new wave hit, they sent out a letter and it said to all the people who'd moved away from headquarters, hey, it's time to come back. We want you to move back to California. And the next day they got a letter signed by 80 saying, we're not coming back. And that just grew and grew. And so I don't know. What do you think? The number 1 brand in the world where everybody in that field wants to work for says, come back. And these people say no. What does that tell you? Is it for everybody? No, it's not for everybody. I think it's 84 or 94% of people want to work hybrid at least 1 or 2 days a week who can. And I think that's where we're going to settle. But I think there are productivity issues. But
so how do we lead in that? What's one thing we do? Because there is research showing connection goes down. There is research saying, to me, we have to focus, leading well virtually, we have to make it really outcomes based, like you're paid for outcomes. That's relatively easy, but in some roles, they might not have like the sales outcome. And so how do we kind of, lead well? I mean, you still do have people, all of a sudden they've got 3 jobs that none of them know that that they have these 3 jobs they're getting incomes from, or whatever, because they're just at home kind of being able to run all 3, So we know high trust environments have a healthy form of accountability. I guess for leaders, it's still a challenge of do you have any other how we actually create healthy connection and accountability in a hybrid environment?
Yeah. So I have a coach leadership model, and it's got 6 words on it. And I think you're going to like the words. So in the middle, so this is the change. Okay. This is what's been elevated. The 2 words in the middle are autonomy and authority. And so what's happened is that people really want autonomy. It gets construed as flexibility. They want to work when they want, how they want, where they want. Harvard Business Review came out and said, no, what people want is autonomy. They don't want to be told, hey, yeah, we're going to work in the office Tuesday through Thursday. They want to be able to pick what days they work in the office. Mm-hmm. Well, now on the other side, we've got authority, leaders, managers, and they got to get the job done. They got to get the project done. And they've got a team of people who have to work together with trust, with great communication in order to have it happen. And so it's herding cats. So how can you give everybody autonomy and then have authority do it? So on the team member side, I've kind of made it the 2 words for team members. They're purpose-driven team members and pleasure-driven team members. Purpose, These are the top performer. They're there for a reason. They got a bigger goal or dream. This is a stepping stone to where they want to go. Their career is thought out, what they want to accomplish. They want to be a more capable person tomorrow than they are today. The pleasure driven, and of course, everybody's on a spectrum, and we might be pleasure driven one day and purpose the next. I'm not saying that we're stuck or we always act the same. At Ziglar, we call them zombies. Gallup calls them the disengaged. So the new Gallup study came on that. 34% of workers are engaged. 50% are disengaged, and 16% are actively disengaged. And I call the actively disengaged, they're the biters. That's how zombies infect others, right? They're toxic. And so basically, they make decisions that suit their personal needs. They do as little work as they have to keep their job. On the leadership side, I think there's two kinds of leaders. There's the accountability leader, and then there's the control leader. A control leader is do it because I said so, delegate, command and control, very results oriented. What have you done for me lately? My symbol for them is the T-Rex. They got sharp teeth and short arms, right? They bite your head off. They lead with fear, and short arms means they keep everything close. The accountability leader is what I call the coach leader. And I use an illustration from Doc Rivers. And Doc Rivers is one of the great NBA coaches. And they asked him, they said, how do you lead people who make more money than you? And he said, well, I just have a conversation with them. And they said, what do you say? And he said, well, I ask them, what are your goals for the year? And of course, in the NBA, you get a contract and your agent negotiates it. And if whatever position you play, you get bonuses on number of rebounds or number of points or minutes played. And if you make the all-star team. And he says, I just let them talk. I let them tell me what their goals and dreams are. And then I ask them what it means to them. Like, if you get those, what does that mean to you? And then he said, I ask them, is it okay if I hold you accountable to your goals? And so the ownership of the goal, of the plan, is on the player, right? He didn't tell them what to do. They told him what they wanted, and then he co-created a plan with them to help them get it. Mm-hmm. And so here's what I'm getting at is we have autonomy and authority. What people want is autonomy, and we've got authority. So coach leaders choreograph the dance between autonomy and authority. And so here's a coach leader's purpose. It's to equip, support, encourage, develop the top performer in such a way that they co-create a plan together so that they become a better, more capable team member, top performer tomorrow than they are today, for the sole purpose of giving them as much autonomy as possible. We want Navy SEALs on our team. We want to say, here's the mission, go get it, how can I help? That's what we want to say. Now, top performers, this is really interesting. Top performers realize when they have a coach leader, and they're grateful for it. And they will literally go to the coach leader and they'll say, I've never had someone believe more in me than I believe in myself.
How do you hire the top performer?
Well, you search them as you can, but then you develop them, because it's hard, right? So when you bring a new hire on, your goal is that they will become a top performer, which means there's two things you're hoping on. They have the ingredients to become one, and they have the desire to become one. Now, remember what I said about zombies. What's a zombie? It's somebody with a brain disease. Zombies don't care because they have no dreams. And so what a coach leader does is taps in to that team member and says, what's your dream? What's your goal? If you do fantastic, do you want to make more money this year? Fantastic. I want to pay you more money. In order for that to happen, your contribution to the profitability and growth of the business, the team, whatever their role is has to merit an increase in compensation. What do you think? Do you want to put together a plan so you can make more money? So here's kind of a hot topic right now.
Okay.
I have a DEI coach, diversity, equity, and inclusion. And I'm doing it because I'm following Dad. Dad, when he would speak, he didn't care what the audience brought into the room, right? He was never upset about them being, high school kids or 70 years old or salespeople or technicians, right? All he wanted to know is, how can I best communicate to this group of people so that they receive the information and take action on it and their life has changed. He never held it against them what their past experience was, where they came from, what profile he didn't care. He only wanted to know, how can I reach the people in the room? And so I'm like, I want to reach everybody. It doesn't matter where you come from. And so my coach, her name is Michelle. She's from Puerto Rico. She grew up on the East Coast. She did corporate America. She's our age. And she's like, well, how does a coach leader help somebody like me? And I said, what do you mean? Because I needed context. And she said, well, when I entered into the corporate world, my culture was I would never volunteer for a project. I would never go into the manager's office and say I need a raise. And the first time I went to New York City, I was 20, and we're in Grand Central Station. I go to the pizza place, and the pizza guy says, what do you want? And I hesitated. And the guy behind me ordered right over my shoulder. And, when you're from Texas, that's a culture shock, right? It's not right or wrong. It's just the way it is. And so she says, how would a coach leader help me? Because it took me years to figure out how to stand up for myself, how to put myself in a position to get that. And I said, here's the thing. A coach leader never lets that happen, because day one, when you work for a coach leader, they meet with you one-on-one and they say, why are you here? What's your goal? What's your dream? Do you want to be making more money a year from now? Do you want a promotion? What is it that you want? And then when they tell you, you say, why do you want it? And you dig into what's the driver? What is it that gets them going? Because here's the reality. Every person on your team's got a different experience, a different background, a different set of limiting beliefs, a different culture, a different perspective. And when you get all those things out on the table and let them know that you are on their side and you're going to help them grow, you're not going to create the plan. They're going to create it with your guidance. And so it's real simple. A great coaching question. What attitudes can you demonstrate that will help you to be more effective in your job role? Well, you ask different personality styles that, and they're going to give you different answers, right? Because it's not one size fits all. If I'm in a if I'm a people person, outgoing, talk a lot, I'm probably going to say, well, I need to ask better questions and listen. Mm-hmm. Somebody who's quiet is like, well, I'm going to have to raise my energy level, right? So it's different for everybody. And so that's to me, when a coach leader gets involved and knows this, they know the goals and dreams of the people on their team. And then here's the other sea change that's happened since the pandemic, and that is quality of life is now primary importance in people's thought process and decision making. The number one issue in big business today, as far as their concerns looking down from HR, is the health and well-being of their people. Because if that suffers, productivity and performance goes down. This great resignation that we're in, that I call the great reimagination, is a lot of it's burnout. It's short staff. It's people they don't know when the day ends and the day begins. This takes a reimagining of the way we do business. Right? And leaders have to step up and fill the void. And that means, hey, David, how are you doing? How's the family? You feeling okay? And when somebody knows that you care about their quality of life as well as their performance, and you do things proactively to increase their balanced success or to make it more likely, their performance is going to go up, because quality of life equals quality of performance.
Love it. So in the book, and we went right through a lot of great things here. We're going to touch on a couple things here. The coach leader, people can learn more about that in the book, which is 10 Leadership Virtues for Disruptive Times. Talk about different virtues from kindness and selflessness, respect, humility. Boy, that's critical today, isn't it? What would happen if people would humble themselves? And speaking of bringing scripture into it, God opposes the proud, and we are seeing plenty of opposition to the proud in many ways. Self-control, looking for the best. I want to touch on one. Let's look at number 5 for just like a 1-minute snippet of self-control. Not many people are talking about self-control. They're thinking about kind of, I just don't see people thinking that way, and yet we know great leaders actually are great at controlling their own wants and not taking instant gratification, we could say. Tell me about that from your perspective.
Yeah, so self-control is actually, it's probably recognized under different names today. We recognize it on airplanes when people get into fights and get kicked off. Mm-hmm. I'm actually going to be doing a presentation up in Oregon to a group where self-control is the big issue, because their customer base, no matter what they do, half of them get upset. Mm-hmm. And so here's the thing. This is the way self-control feeds out. The first thing you've got to know is, why do you do what you do? What's the bigger why? When you're solid in your why, then that gives you purpose and calmness and stability. The second thing is this. When somebody overreacts in their response to you, ask yourself this question: would a secure person do that? And the answer is no. And so I've had to train my mind on this, and that is, when I'm speaking about something or working with somebody, a prospect, a client, whatever the case, and they kind of go off the deep end, I go, that's not a secure person. And let me just tell you, the way you respond to someone when you make that mental thought, that's not a secure person, is totally different. They're not attacking you. They're burned out. They're frustrated. Something in their life is going sideways. And so what does that allow you to do as the leader? It allows you to be present in the situation without escalating it, and to give a response that moves somebody a much higher likelihood in the right direction. And that's really what I was talking about, self-control in the book, is leaders today, they get frustrated by the change, the disruption, and they go off. They're digging their own hole. People need stability and positivity. And there's a difference between short-term confidence and long-term confidence. And this is a big one for leaders. Short-term confidence is results-oriented. What did you do for me yesterday? Well, when your whole business cycle changes because of supply chain issues, what did you do for me yesterday? If that's where your confidence comes from, it's going to be a hard season. But long-term confidence comes from learning and growth. If you've developed a team of people who thrive on learning and growth, then disruption is your friend. And it gives you an edge, because you look at disruption as an opportunity to serve more people, to figure out new ways to do it. Long-term confidence comes from the humility of, I don't know the answer. I don't have to know the answer. I know how to ask questions, and I've got a team of learners and growers who know how to work together, and together we will get this done.
Boy, on that. There's so much more in the book, 10 Leadership Virtues for Disruptive Times. I would encourage everybody to go back to Choose to Win and the great work there and all you're doing at Ziglar. Hey, it's Ziglar.com, Ziglar.com. we love your family. We love your dad and your mom and the redhead, as he would say. And just grateful to call you friend. Anywhere else we can find you, the website or where everybody can connect with you.
Yeah, Facebook, the website at Ziglar.com. I'm on there. And I do something kind of weird. I give out my email. So Tom at Ziglar.com. So
great. Fill it up.
Love it. Thank you, sir.
Well, it has been a treat to have you on. We could talk for hours, and I'm just, grateful for you and your family. We always end with one question on this show. The question is, who is a leader you would trust and why? Or who is a leader you trust and why?
Well, of course, Dad. And I don't know if that's a valid answer because he's graduated. He's gotten his diploma. But a leader I would trust is someone who has a combination of selflessness, humility, kindness, and their motive is to understand what it is in life that I need and to be a conduit to help me get there.
Mm-hmm.
That's who I trust. And I work hard for those.
Well said. Well, thank you, Tom. Thank you, everyone, for listening. This has been the Trusted Leader Show. Until next time, stay trusted.